Good morning, Jake Livingston, Planning Operations for Rocky Mountain Black with the Cameron Peak update for September 1st. Starting out, I'd like to report that we have 5% containment on this portion of the perimeter on the west side. After evaluating it, we felt comfortable with that. This area is primarily up against tree line, up against rocks, and those high ridge lines. Today, for the weather, we can expect temperatures in the fire area to be in the 50s to 60s. RHs 20 to 30%. Winds will be out of the west, 5 to 10, increasing in the afternoon to 10 to 20, gusting up on the ridge lines. Long-term outlook, we're still looking at a warming and drying trend for the next week. I'll start out today by just talking about the fire behavior. The fire did see more rain last evening up until around midnight as reported by field operations. So it did reduce fire behavior and will reduce fire behavior today and over the next several days. However, there still are hot spots out there. And what I mean by hot spots is just smoldering areas sheltered by the vegetation and deadened down trees. So as it dries out, we can expect fire activity to increase, and those smoldering areas will start to show visible flame and whatnot. So we'll keep an eye on that using our air attack and recons with the field operations personnel. As we move up to the northeast and east, we have branch 5, and that's comprised of structure groups 2, 3, and 4. Structure group 2 in the Crystal Lakes area and 3 and structure group 4, they're assessing the values at risk in those communities. And again, like I mentioned yesterday, building supply orders and evacuation plans if needed in the future. And we continue to pull our resources such as equipment, crews, and engines out of our staging area at the fish hatchery to help implement their plans in branch 5 and all the structure groups as they develop them. Also, structure group is working along the Stove Prairie Road and the Buckhorn Road, also the 44 road, and they've started improving that roadway, removing excess vegetation, hazard fuels, hazardous trees, and they'll continue that operation over, well, probably over the next 3 to 5 days. And coming around to the northeast side of the fire in Division Alpha, that's primarily a monitoring status right now, just watching the activity if there is much, but we'll monitor that with these values at risk along the 103 Laramie River Road. And the resources that were in Alpha, there's still some there, but they're helping out other divisions accomplish their tasks. Division Foxtrot, they still have a little bit of an area to tie in with the machine line, the indirect line, and they'll complete that today. And Division Lima, as mentioned in previous days, these indirect lines just south of the Crystal Lakes area, those are completed, and as are the indirect lines in Division Romeo east of the Manhattan Road. So as those resources there finish their primary objectives, they'll help out as needed in branch 5 and in division uniform, but I'll talk about that in a little bit. They are also evaluating these road systems south of the Dead Man Road, primarily the 517 road, and they're going to start prepping that road system using engine crews, hand crews, chippers, just limbing trees, removing hazard trees and hazard fuels, as well as using dozers and masticators to connect some areas along the road system that have more likelihood of success. Some of these corners on these roads are really sharp, and we refer to those as dog legs, and it's just like a sharp corner in a road or in a control line. It's harder to control the fire in those areas. So they straighten it out and maybe connect these road systems with a dozer line on an open ridge or a more gentle terrain. Coming around to Division Uniform, I mentioned yesterday we had the Crown Point Road. They've brought in resources in there, some hand crews and equipment. They continue today to use the equipment to remove hazard snags and just widen out that roadway. The crews will come in behind or in specific areas where they can't use machines and limb up trees, chip the limbs, and just move westward along the Crown Point Road. Up in the vicinity of DP 377, which is north of Browns Lake on the Crown Point Road. Yesterday, the surge group, hotshot crew, Type 2IA crew, wildfire module, and another hotshot crew, they've started to put handline off the road up to the wilderness boundary. That's what they did yesterday. And today, after receiving permission to work in the wilderness, the Comanche Peak wilderness, they'll continue along those open ridge lines and connect to the tree line, just using hand tools and chainsaws, really just minimum impact suppression tactics. So we want to minimize our footprint out there, but also make a control line that we can work off of. So that's ongoing. Today they'll establish some spike camps out on the ridge line, real simple camps. They'll just sling, using helicopters in a net, they'll sling food and water and other camping materials out there for them so they can just progress along that ridge line in an efficient fashion. Coming around to Division Whiskey Victor, we still have, we've identified with a local hotshot crew some line options in here. We're still discussing the safest option for conducting this work in Division Whiskey, but and we're going to identify trigger points. If this fire becomes more active, we'll identify trigger points about when to implement this line coming off of the Highway 14 in the Cameron Pass area. And off of the Long Draw Road, we have identified an area along this drainage here in the Neoto Wilderness. We have just recently this morning received permission to start this line construction off of the Long Draw Road, heading to the southwest toward the Division Whiskey and Zulu Break area, Cameron Pass area, so to hopefully connect all those lines together. And what we have going on in this drainage here, it's adjacent to the drainage, there are a lot of beetle kill trees, so that's a hazard that we can mitigate with hand crews. But it is a natural riparian area. It's a natural opening, a meadow that heads up that drainage up toward tree line, and then coming off a tree line there are some avalanche chutes. So there's a lot of natural barriers in there, so that'll allow us to really minimize our impacts and then utilize those natural features. As far as Structure Group 1, they're still working down Highway 14, improving what they've already done in the previous days as far as structure prep and with water handling equipment and a little bit of limbing trees and everything else. They continue to monitor this fire activity just east of the tunnel, where they had, in the past week before the rains, they had some active fire behavior and had to burn off the structures there. They're going to monitor that activity on the north side of Highway 14 and also on the south side of it. And that's an ongoing. That completes the September 1st update. Thank you for your time.